Welcome back, welcome back. This week, the Communist Party of China held its 17th National Congress in Beijing. The National Congress, which is usually held every 5 years, is the country's most important political event. It oversees major membership changes in leading party bodies and determines the top leadership of the People's Republic of China for the next 5 years. Although President and Party leader Hu Jintao and Prime Minister Wen Jiabao are slated to keep their jobs until they retire in 2012, the number one item, nevertheless, at the Congress was the advancement of the next generation of China's leaders. And joining me today to discuss the Congress effect on China and on the rest of the world is Kerry Brown from the Chatham House think tank. Kerry, welcome. What did we learn? What did we get out of this? What did the Chinese get out of this Congress?
In terms of policy, there's really nothing, because all of the policy has been set before. I mean, their long-term commitments. In terms of leadership changes, this is important because we get the first clue to who is likely to replace President Hu and Prime Minister Wen at the next Congress in 2012. Leadership change in China is very sensitive. It's always been a fairly bloody affair. The transition from the last president, Jiang, to this president, Hu, was okay. So the transition from him and to what we call the fifth generation of leadership, you know, from 2012, is important. It could become messy because there are about 16 people who are in the frame to replace Hu and Wen. So we will have an idea of who the real poll leaders are today, basically.
And who do you think that will be?
Well, the one that's everyone's favourite is the current party secretary of the northeastern province, Liaoning, a guy called Li Keqiang, from a very poor background. He's worked his way up through the party, a real sort of communist worker. The other guy is the current party secretary of Shanghai, Xi Jinping, who is a princeling, has a very, very good family background in the Communist Party. So they're very different characters. One of them very internationalized. Xi Jinping has a doctorate, and he's been abroad quite a bit. Li Keqiang, grassroots worker. So that's the battle.
And how, I see. And in terms of that, how much does personality and things like that affect policy in China? Or is policy, as it were, set in a rigid way, and whoever is the leader will do what's necessary to follow that policy and won't change things very much?
Since the 1980s, China has enjoyed a stable international environment. Its greatest enemies are the internal enemies: instability, the difference between the coastal provinces and the internal provinces, the environment. So the party, you know, it's focused on maintaining its hold on power, and the party leaders who demonstrate the best kind of grassroots support, who are capable of making the party stay in power, they will be the ones who are best positioned to be the new leadership. Because the Communist Party of China, in the end, you know, it's a one-party state. The Communist Party of China, in the end, wants to stay in power. It doesn't care about ideology, just power. Just
power. What about just Olympics? How important is that to the Chinese leadership? Is that a very important gateway to the world?
Off the scale. I mean, to them, it's the big coming out party. They will be an international power. I think what I'd stress is, you know, when the leadership, the new Politburo, walk out sometime today, sometime tomorrow, they'll be global leaders. They'll affect our future. And the Olympics to them next August is a hugely important event. They're very nervous about it. They really want it to be rolling out the China of the 21st century, in a sense, a superpower. That's how important they regard it.
And what about their relations, for instance, with North Korea and indeed Taiwan?
Well, for many years we always assumed they had limited influence on North Korea, and North Korea was very, very enclosed. But they showed when North Korea demonstrated its nuclear weapons earlier this year, its nuclear capacity, that they did have influence. They sent their foreign senior leader there, Tang Jiashuan, and basically said to the North Koreans, back off. Since then, the North Koreans have come to the six-party talks. They've compromised. They've talked back with the Americans. So I think that China has a big influence there. And in Burma, China is increasingly involved in international affairs. Of the last 23 peacekeeping missions through the UN, China has taken part in 16.
That's very interesting. And of course, they're very active in Africa too. Thank you very much for being with us. We really appreciate it. We look forward to welcoming you back with more revelations about what's next in China.
Thank you very much.
We move on now to Turkey. Earlier this week, the parliament voted in favour of military incursion into Iraq to destroy Kurdish rebel bases. Radical Kurds demand the creation of a Kurdish state, which would take away territory from the shared border areas between both Iraq and Turkey. The United States, a close ally of Turkey, is against such an incursion, fearing it would destabilise Iraq. Yet Turkey is already quite irked by the United States for its approval of the Armenian Genocide Resolution. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. to tell us how close the storm is getting is Omer Taspinar. He's the director of the Turkey program at the Brookings Institution. Welcome, Omer. Those two issues, there's the issue of relations with the United States, and then there's the question of invasion of the Kurdish areas. Which of those two is the greater danger to peace in the area?
Well, in the eyes of Ankara and in the eyes of the Turkish public opinion, both issues are closely interrelated. Most Turks, and certainly the government and the parliament, believe that the United States now is in charge of Iraq. Therefore, when there is an incursion from Iraqi territories of Kurdish separatists, the PKK terrorist organization, killing Turkish soldiers, most of the anger in Turkey is directed towards Washington. In fact, in the funerals of fallen soldiers, most of the slogans are not against the PKK, but are against the United States. Now, to make things worse, over the last 2 weeks, the US Congress was playing with the idea of voting a non-binding resolution which would accept the massacres of 1915, which Turkey accepts as Armenian massacres, as genocide. That's a very difficult topic for Turkey. Most Turks are unable to come to terms with what happened in 1915, but they certainly don't want to have the label genocide attached to it. So in that sense, there was an additional sense of anger, resentment against Washington, which in a way gave momentum to the parliament's decision to authorize the military to do something in northern Iraq.
And so the word, in terms of what happened in 1915, the word massacre is acceptable in Turkey, but the word genocide is not.
Exactly. Most Turks accept that something terrible happened in 1915, that it was a tragedy for the Armenians. Yet they put things into context. This was World War I. The Ottoman Empire was invaded by Russia, and there were Armenian nationalists rebelling against the Ottoman Empire because they wanted to create an Armenia themselves. In that sense, the comparison with Nazi Germany and the Holocaust and the portrayal of the Armenian genocide as the first Holocaust of the 21st century really rubs the Turkish establishment, and more importantly, Turks, the wrong way. They don't believe this was a genocide. In fact, they believe an equal number of Turks also died during the World War I in Eastern Anatolia.
And so they feel angry about that. Do you think that either of these situations are close to a form of warfare or close to violence? I mean, the Kurd situation, is there a danger of that really turning really ugly really quickly, or not?
I think this week was crucial in terms of what could happen. And on the Armenia front in Congress, those who wanted to pass the genocide resolution have lost momentum. There has been a really onslaught in the American media against the Democrats who have been sponsoring the genocide bill on the grounds that this is not the good time to judge history, what happened 90 years ago, at the time when the United States needs its ally, its NATO ally, for the war effort in Iraq and Afghanistan. So once again, the Democrats were portrayed as utterly hopeless, not willing to recognize the geostrategic stakes and the national interest of the United States, and beholden to an ethnic lobby. That, I think, created a sense of wake-up call within the Democrat Party, and now if the bill comes to the floor of Congress, there is a sense that it may not pass. Therefore, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has declared yesterday that she will reconsider. which was very good news in Turkey. And I think it will have a certain impact on the way Turkey will react in northern Iraq, because the Turkish parliament's decision to authorize the military was at least partly in retaliation, in response to the US decision to pass a resolution on the genocide bill. Therefore, right now, I think the Turkish goal is to really grab world's attention with what they did to pass to give the authorization to the military for a cross-border incursion to northern Iraq. But this does not mean that the Turkish military is about to engage in a military operation in northern Iraq. In fact, I don't think the Turkish military really wants that, because they know that things can unravel very easily, and they've seen what happened to the United States when they tried to take on an insurgency. Therefore, what they really wish, what Ankara really wishes, is that the US, with its Kurdish partners in northern Iraq, would take care of this PKK organization, that they would themselves send troops or organize airstrikes against the PKK safe havens in northern Iraq.
Well, it's been a joy to have you with us, Omar, and here's to the next time. Thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm afraid that's all that we've got time for this week. Do join me again 7 days from now for another edition of Frost Over the World. Until then, goodbye for now.